Hello, and thank you for joining us for part 3 of our series, Connecting Citizen Science with Remote Sensing. My name is Amber McCullum, and I'm joined by my colleagues Juan Torres-Perez and Brittany Boudry for this session. We are also honored to be joined by our guest presenters, Rusty Lowe from the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies and the science lead for the NASA Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper, and Peter Nelson from Oregon State University and the science lead for the NASA Globe Observer Land Cover Tool. I also want to acknowledge contributions from Jennifer Stingline with the Wisconsin DNR from Snapshot Wisconsin, a project that we'll highlight later, as well as contributions from Katie Spellman, Research Assistant Professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks in the International Arctic Research Center, who provided videos for Fresh Eyes on Earth and Arctic Earth Signs. For this training, we have 3 sessions, each being 1.5 hours long on January 24th, 26th, and then this one, the final one, is occurring here on January 31st. As you may know if you've attended the other sessions, it's a bilingual training where we present the same material in English and again in Spanish. And here's the course website where you can find all the materials, including the recordings to watch via YouTube, the presentation materials, and now available the link to the homework. At the end of each session, we have time for question and answers, where we will display your questions and transcribe the answers on a document. And we'll make that document available to you all about a week after the session is complete. If you have additional questions, you can email myself, Juan, or Brittany at our email addresses shown here. As mentioned, there's one homework assignment to complete the course, and you can submit this via Google Forms, and the link is now available on the course website. With most of our ARSET courses, the certificate of completion will be available to you if you've attended all 3 live sessions and complete this homework by February 14th. So that's 2 weeks from now. If you do receive a certificate of completion, please be patient as we gather up all the certificates and send them out. And you can expect to receive your certificate about 2 months after the completion of the course. So as we've discussed before, here's the course outline, and we're really excited for part 3 today to discuss land applications of citizen science and Earth observations. By the end of this training, we hope you will all be able to outline key aspects of citizen science projects, including community engagement and motivations, ethics, and policies, data quality assurance and accessibility, and also be able to summarize some applications of Earth observations for citizen science, in particular through the highlighted projects. So for this session, I will start us off by highlighting a few popular citizen science projects very briefly that relate to Earth observations, such as iNaturalist, eBird, Wildfire Insights, and so on. I will then discuss 2 NASA-supported projects. The first, Soundscapes to Landscapes, and the second, Snapshot Wisconsin, in more depth. As mentioned, we've received contributions from Jennifer Stingline of the Wisconsin DNR for our Snapshot Wisconsin project. And then we will be joined by our guest speakers, Rusty Lowe and Peter Vernon, to talk about the NASA Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper, as well as the land cover application. And then finally, we will see 2 videos about the Fresh Eyes on Ice and Arctic and Earth Signs projects, with contributions provided by Katie Spellman. And then at the end today, we will have time for a question and answer session. So there are a few popular projects and tools that I'd like to highlight for land applications of citizen science. In terms of tracking phenological patterns, particularly in the United States, the National Phenology Network is a national scale monitoring and research initiative focused on collecting, organizing, and delivering phenological data that can support decision-making and advance the science of phenology. This network consists of a national coordinating office with thousands of volunteer observers and many partners. And anyone who participates in Nature's Notebook or collaborates with coordinating staff to advance the science of phenology or to inform decisions is part of this large network. iNaturalist is a popular smartphone application that has led to a surge in contributed observations and now account for a large percentage of new species occurrence observations. As a citizen scientist, you can connect with other observers, contribute to a specific scientific project, and even hold field campaigns. And then the observations are vetted for quality by the experts. Wildlife Insights allows for the collection, dissemination, and analysis of camera trap data globally. Anyone can upload their images to Wildlife Insights and identify species using artificial intelligence. And this saves thousands of hours, freeing up more time for the scientists to apply the insights to conservation. Map of Life is a web platform geared for large biodiversity and environmental data. Map of Life aims to support effective and global biodiversity education, monitoring, research, and decision-making by assembling and integrating a wide range of knowledge about species distributions and their dynamics over time. There are many tools available on this platform to map species, to explore environmental parameters, and to evaluate patterns. You can also obtain their mobile app and discover, identify, and record biodiversity data. eBird is among the world's largest biodiversity-related science projects, with more than 100 million bird sightings contributed annually by eBirders around the world. The goal here is to gather and share bird information in the form of checklists and to provide power to new data-driven approaches to science, conservation, and education. You can also see videos and hear recordings of birds, see real-time maps of bird habitats, and subscribe to alerts that let you know when certain species have been seen. And there are many tools available out there for citizen science around the world. And so I just wanted to mention a few of these. And now we will talk a little bit more in depth about a few projects here. So the first I wanted to highlight is a project called Soundscapes to Landscapes. Soundscapes to Landscapes is a distributed citizen science-based acoustic monitoring project that uses cost-effective mobile and web-based technologies, autonomous recording units, and bioacoustic analyses to monitor bird diversity and broad soundscape components of anthropology, geophony, and biophony. Project citizen scientists are community volunteers and undergraduate interns that participate at varying levels depending on their skill and interest. The research primarily occurred in Northern California, here in Sonoma County, and has the support of various organizations shown here at the bottom of this slide. And you can also learn more about the citizen science components of their project by clicking on this link here above the image to their recent paper, Citizen Science Theory and Practice. And for many of these next slides, I'll be discussing outcomes and points to that paper shown here. So please do take a look at that for more information. So in this paper, the team outlined specific steps for this project. And in green are the primary aspects focused around citizen science, which include establishing workflow and project coordination structure, recruiting, training, collecting field data, doing field work, map making, and data uploads. Also collecting bioacoustic data in regions of interest and engaging the citizen scientists throughout the reporting. The team also conducted more technical aspects of the project, and those are shown here in red on the right. And these consist of deep learning, data processing, compiling the remote sensing habitat characteristics, and generating species distribution maps. For this project, the team used several approaches to recruit citizen scientists to participate. They divided their citizen scientists into two categories. One, community volunteers, including property owners, and two, student interns who received academic credit. They initially recruited 3 community volunteers with extensive knowledge of bird vocalizations to participate as official collaborators. This ensured they had the expertise needed to successfully accomplish the project. And these collaborators also assisted with citizen scientist recruitment. To recruit community volunteers, they used word of mouth, presentations to local birding groups, a project website, and social media. To recruit undergraduate students, they gave presentations in college classrooms, advertised on college career boards, and sent announcements to targeted email lists. All the citizen scientists signed up on the website, and this allowed them to choose the activities they were interested in engaging with. And they also used volunteer recruitment websites such as SciStarter, which I mentioned during session 1, and Volunteer Match, which also had a global reach. To collect the sound recordings, the team used 2 types of recording units. The team developed a stratified random sampling design based on land use, distance-based variables, and forest structure and chemical properties. Then using ArcGIS Pro, they trained citizen scientists to create property scale maps to be used in the field. Field teams also used free smartphone applications and GPS to navigate to site locations, as well as ArcGIS and Survey 123 to collect ancillary site data, including location coordinates, date and time of deployment, property information, and photographs of the survey site. Sampling campaigns were conducted annually in March to early July from 2017 to 2021. And this time frame captured most of the birding season when birds vocalize for mating and defending their territory. The citizen scientists found sample clips of bird vocalizations from over 8,000 hours of audio recording data just in those first 4 years of the project. In their 2022 paper that I mentioned previously, the team outlined a few of their lessons learned. And these included the development of low-cost sound ARUs allowed passive acoustic sampling over more locations and time periods than previously available with more expensive equipment. And this opened up exciting opportunities for the citizen scientists to become more engaged. Also, the web-based tools provided a nice platform for the citizen scientists to engage in the analysis. In 5 years, the project engaged 259 citizen scientists to collect over 12,000 hours of audio recordings and to validate over 230,000 samples of bird vocalizations. And this was really necessary for the automated species detection algorithms that they applied. And this was focused on broad spatial sampling on the county scale. And the approach of engaging undergraduate students and community volunteers could be scaled up to other regions or over different time periods. They also found that offering a variety of tasks for citizen scientists to participate was a successful engagement approach. However, they noted that no single platform will meet all the data management, analysis, and social engagement needs of a project like this. Since this training really centers around the use of Earth observations in citizen science, I also wanted to briefly highlight some of the work the team did around habitat mapping, in particularly linking forest structure to soundscapes and thus biodiversity. So with this work, the team focused on the use of the Global Ecosystem Dynamics Investigation, or GEDI, which is a LiDAR platform that began collecting data from the International Space Station in March 2019. Previously, airborne LiDAR data was limited with spatial coverage and had been used to examine relationships between forest canopy structure and faunal diversity and some bird species. In this regional study, the team examined the impact that the GEDI-derived canopy structure variables have on the performance of the bird species distribution models for their Sonoma County region example. So the team used a weighted average ensemble of 7 individual machine learning models to make predictions for each species and calculate variable importance. They found that canopy structure variables were, on average, at the finest resolution of 250 meters, the second most important group of predictor variables, right after the climate variables in their model. Canopy structure variables were most important for predicting probability of occurrence of birds associated with conifer forest habitat. Regarding the spatial scale, the spatial analysis, they found that finer scale models more frequently perform better than coarser scale models. And the importance of the canopy structure variable was greater at finer resolution. Overall, the GEDI data improved the species distribution model performance for at least one spatial resolution for 19 to 25 of the species. This indicated promise for improving models of bird species occurrence and for mapping potential habitat in other regions as well. And I also wanted to make note that the technical paper on some of this analysis is linked here in the slide too. So if you have questions or more information about that piece of this project, you can check out that paper shown here. Okay, so now I will highlight a previously supported NASA project called Snapshot Wisconsin. And I also wanted to make a note that there was a recent New York Times article that came out about Snapshot Wisconsin. So it's a really fantastic project and has done some really great work over the years. So Snapshot Wisconsin was conducted by researchers from the University of Wisconsin and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. You can see the project team listed here, and as I mentioned, the slides here were provided to us by the Wisconsin DNR. Snapshot Wisconsin is a community science project for monitoring wildlife through a statewide network of trail cameras. Snapshot is a statewide trail camera network powered by the people of Wisconsin to improve data for wildlife monitoring and management. The data are also used to further our understanding of the behavior of wildlife as it relates to changes in weather, land cover, and human influence. This work started in 2015 as a collaboration with NASA, and it was launched statewide in 2018. Currently, there are over 1,800 volunteers with over 2,000 trail cameras. Over the course of this project, the team has collected over 72 million trail camera photos, with about 1 million photos taken per month. In the figure here, the orange blocks indicate where the volunteers host trail cameras, and the blue areas indicate where elk populations live. You will also notice that they have a higher concentration of trail cameras to monitor reintroduced elk herds. Many of the trail cameras are already placed on the landscape, and the volunteers can apply to monitor the cameras as well. There are two main ways you can get involved with Snapshot Wisconsin as a community scientist. The first is to host trail cameras. The project divides the state into 6,000 survey blocks where volunteers can sign up to host a trail camera. This work involves deploying and maintaining the camera for at least a year. The team provides all the equipment needed to participate at no cost. The volunteers will maintain the cameras and do things like swap the data cards and batteries and upload photos. After checking the camera and uploading their photos, the volunteers get the first opportunity to see the trail camera photos. So they get to see what the camera has captured and classify them to get a better understanding of the wildlife that is in their area. The second way you can get involved is by helping to classify the wildlife found on the trail camera photos. Trail cameras, while hosted by the volunteers to collect the photos, they don't necessarily have the time for identifying all of the animals, and also some of them can be difficult to ID. Therefore, the photos get sent to Zooniverse, the crowdsourcing site that we mentioned earlier in this training, where anyone can classify the photos even without hosting a trail camera. This is a really great learning opportunity and a fun way to connect other individuals who can identify animals and connect via Zooniverse and engage with each other via the talkboards. In fact, the team has people from all across the world helping to classify photos on Zooniverse. So each of the red dots here are cities from which the Snapshot Wisconsin Zooniverse page has been accessed. So you can access this platform at snapshotwisconsin.org and help to classify photos right now. So to give you a little idea of what these images look like and what's being captured, here are a few. This first example, as you can see, are the ears of a deer fawn. And they capture some really charismatic shots of animals, like this male elk, also known as a bull elk from Sawyer County. They also capture interesting interactions between species, such as this turkey flock and the deer, shown here. They can also capture photos at night, and here you see a striped skunk and a coyote. And again, some interesting interactions between the same species, such as these black bears having a good time. You can also see two male deer, known as bucks, during the rut. So these two male deers interacting here at night. And you can also see things like badgers in cornfields. So there's a really diverse set of species and behaviors and activities being captured. Then when the team examines their photos, they notice that 24% of their data set contain animals, and the majority of the animal photos are of deer, as you can see here in this breakdown. Additionally, 13% of their data set are photos that still need to receive a classification, and some of those contain animals as well. So you can also use their data dashboard with the websites listed here to do things like examine the data, to view the metadata for certain species. You can compare species by ecological landscape. You can download spatial and temporal data and examine specific species by time and by the time of day and by the day of the year. You can examine data from 19 different species from 2017 to 2021. The graphical visualizations on the dashboard adjust for each of the species. You can also view things like the species list, the date, the map visual, such as state versus county or ecological landscape. You can look by hour, by month, or detections over the year. So you could compare different species. And you can also download the data. The team has heard from educators about how useful this dashboard is when incorporating them into a classroom setting as well. So one important piece of this project is that data from Snapshot Wisconsin are used annually to provide data for wildlife decisions. For example, Snapshot Wisconsin data are used to create trends in space and time for fisher and bobcat. This information is provided to the Furberry Observatory Committee to help them understand the status of fisher and bobcat populations across the state. Also, deer fawn to doe ratios are generated for each county of Wisconsin and are used as an input into their population model to estimate annual deer herd size by county. So here are a few of the papers that the team has created that highlight their work with the collaboration of the University of Wisconsin-Madison and NASA, where cutting-edge wildlife science is done by combining the remote sensing and the trail camera data. So I'll highlight a few key pieces from some of these papers shown here. One of these papers from Townsend et al. In 2021 laid the groundwork for how the combination of remote sensing and trail camera data could improve ecological monitoring and management. In this paper, they provide 6 examples of what can be learned through the pairing of remote sensing and trail camera data. So it's a really great resource if you're interested in this kind of work. One example is increasing the temporal resolution for the distribution of black bears in Wisconsin. Bears hibernate during winter and therefore effectively are gone from the landscape. And in this paper, Townsend et al. Predicted daily bear occurrence across Wisconsin and created a map for each month of the year. And so you can see some of those results here. They also demonstrated how remote sensing and trail camera data could be used in occupancy modeling to predict the occurrence of species that were not otherwise monitored by the Wisconsin DNR. Coyote, possum, and skunk trail camera data were modeled with land cover covariates to show the distribution of these species. This can be done annually to provide trend information for the Fur Bear Observatory Committee. In another paper by Gilbert et al. In 2021, they expanded on the idea of combining data sets and demonstrated how the integration of camera data and harvest data with remote sensing in integrated species distribution models leads to occurrence probability predictions for 6 species in Wisconsin. In 2022, Gilbert et al. Published another paper in behavioral ecology that examined the behavioral flexibility of deer during variable winter weather. They predicted that during cold extremes, deer become more diurnal. They move less and show stronger anchoring to refugee habitats such as coniferous forests. Then during warm extremes, deer become more nocturnal, move more, and are more likely to use open habitats. They found through the use of photos and diurnal temperature patterns that deer change their behavior in the winter to find warmer places and are more active during warmer times of day. This slide shows how the team combined trail camera data with Earth observations. In order to understand the use of temporal refugia, they modeled deer activity at daily resolution during night, dawn, day, and dusk as a function of weather predictors. To understand the use of spatial refugia, they modeled deer activity at camera locations at daily resolution as a function of landscape characteristics, weather conditions, and landscape weather interactions. They found that there's a decrease in nighttime activity and an increase in daytime activity as the winter progresses, and that deer showed more daytime and less dawn and night activity, respectively, under cold temperatures, deep snow, and severe weather conditions. For the spatial analysis, they found that during cold extremes, deer were slightly more active in conifer-dominated landscapes. And under high cumulative weather severity, deer were generally much less active, with highest activity occurring in landscapes with abundant topographic relief and intermediate levels of carnivorous forests, deciduous forests, and or open habitat. These insights can also be useful for examining behaviors in response to a changing climate. The documented use of temporal and spatial refugia by deer suggests that behavior might be key in adapting to increasing climatic variability and the greater likelihood of extreme weather. So to summarize, Snapshot Wisconsin trail camera data and Earth observation data has led to improved ecological monitoring for Wisconsin's wildlife populations. Wildlife management decision support products that are produced and used annually to help understand the status and trends of wildlife populations. And cutting-edge wildlife science on behavior and interactions of wildlife species in space and time. Snapshot Wisconsin exists because of people-powered research. Volunteers set up trail cameras and volunteers classify photos. Their classification data set is done entirely with human vision and could not be done without all of the volunteers that make the work possible. So finally, here's an acknowledgement of the team, the collaborators and partners, including the thousands of volunteers that helped make the work possible. So with that, I'd like to now hand it over to our guest speakers, Peter Nelson with Oregon State University and the science lead for the NASA Globe Observer land cover, and Rusty Lowe with the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies and the science lead for the NASA Globe Observer mosquito habitat mapper. So over to you, Peter and Rusty.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I'm excited to be here as the science lead for the Globe Observer land cover tool to discuss how we can connect citizen science with remote sensing. And why we are doing this outreach to citizen scientists is because we have a lot of key scientific questions that we're trying to really answer related to land cover and land cover changes over the globe. And importantly, we're wondering, what is the land cover that covers the Earth? Is there vegetation there? Are there buildings there? Is there snow in those locations? And importantly, how are these changes occurring both at a global scale as well as a local scale? And what are the drivers for the changes that we are all seeing around us? These are some of the really important scientific questions that NASA, as well as many other agencies and people, are looking to answer using remote sensing. And the big question is, with a challenge like this, how can we obtain the data necessary to support the remote sensing objectives? And while supporting NASA's transformation to open science mission, And the answer really is citizen science. And here we want to discuss how you can do science through the mobile apps, as well as opening up our science beyond the traditional people who use it, using something like a sensor in your pocket. And so for today, we're going to really talk about two applications and protocols within the Globe Observer mobile app. And these allow us to not only look at one aspect of the world, but by combining together protocols and observations like this, we can get more insight into not just where are things occurring on Earth, but how are they affecting other living creatures, such as mosquitoes, or in the way that mosquitoes might be affecting people. And so it's important to recognize that all of this is helping us to move the science forward through a common platform, a common way of collecting our data, and it's all in support of not only NASA science, but these larger United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So today we're going to briefly go through the tool itself and help you to see how we collect the data that you will then be able to use in further remote sensing applications. So the big key is you can download the app and then become part of our Globe community. And you can opt in to actually have more communications with us or with scientists who are working with this data. If you're one of those people and would like to be a little bit more involved, reach out to the Globe program to find out how you as a scientist might be able to be more involved. A really important piece of this is that there's the ability to change languages to reflect where you're working and what works for the local environment. And this is a really valuable piece that allows us to work across the 127 countries that make up the Globe program. And one of the things that you can do inside of here is you can create your own team, which allows you to organize your data around maybe a particular science question or a particular area. And I want to highlight that Globe Observer is an open tool that allows not only students to engage with science data and to do research, but also the larger public to contribute to the science and education. So I want to really highlight how you can participate in using the land cover protocol to help us do remote sensing and to use some of the technology that we have available to us today. And what's really nice about this is that there is in-app training that guides an observer through how to collect the data in three different ways. And it's important to recognize that we're creating a lot of different data here to support the many different applications that a land cover can support. And a little later on, we'll be giving an exact demonstration of how to work with mosquito data, but recognize that we're having people locate themselves. And so we're recording the location accuracy of these measurements. And then importantly, we're also getting surface conditions, which can be the focus of research, or it might be something that helps us to understand why we're seeing the measurements that we are in the remote sensing data. And the main data type that we're getting here is ground photos that are taken in each of the cardinal directions, as well as up and down, so that we get a picture of the satellite or what the satellite might see in the atmosphere, as well as a little bit closer of the ground conditions below us. And the nice thing is that by using the mobile device and the sensors, we're able to locate the direction of these photos, and it is done in a scientific fashion that allows us to repeat and understand these 6 photos as they are submitted and archived in the database. And why is this data important is because ground reference data is really expensive to obtain. And there are so many different types of disturbances that are happening around the world in uh, unknown times and in unknown or unpredictable locations. And so by being able to mobily go to a location, you can record something like this, where there was a forest fire that came through in 2010 in this location, as we can see as we look at the remote sensing data here. Um, but what we're also able to recognize with expert eyes is how that location is recovering or changing, and what the sensor might actually be recording here as things happen after this disturbance event occurred. Now, again, this is complementary data that can help us to understand what we're seeing from the remotely sensed data like this. And I encourage you to explore some of the other ARSET trainings that could take advantage of data like this. And one of the big reasons why we're wanting to collect this citizen science data like this is to understand the locations of satellite data, as well as understand the maps and derivative products that are coming out of that. And here in our app, one of the things that we built is the ability to compare your ground observation to a satellite land cover map. In this case, coming from the MODIS sensor and at a particular resolution. And the big thing here is that we're wanting to connect citizen scientists to this remote sensing data and provide a way for them to give feedback to scientists to improve their product. So this is one aspect that we're actually asking people to report differences back to us. And what I find really powerful about this as a land cover scientist is that land cover is something that not only affects me and what I'm interested in studying, but it also can support other people's research. And one of the people that I've been able to work with is Dr. Rusty Lowe, who has taken the land cover data and actually applied it to a particular problem. And so, Rusty, can you take us through how you've been able to use this Globe Observer land cover data in your research?
Hey, thank you, Peter. A nice introduction there. It's really great to be here and to be part of the NASA the NASA data collection program about what we can find out about Earth. And one of the apps we have is the Mosquito Habitat Mapper. The question I always get is, can NASA actually see mosquitoes from space? Why are we collecting that data? And Peter, the next one, the answer, of course, is no. We can't see it from space, but citizen scientists can make that connection between that satellite data, that land cover data, and those very small micro habitats that mosquitoes then live in. And so for the research that we are conducting through the lab I'm working in, is we're using the Mosquito Habitat Mapper tool, always in conjunction with the land cover tool. So the reason why this is important is, if you take this picture here, you can see this is kind of like a landscape picture. And you can see all the places where mosquitoes might find a oviposition or a place to have a breeding site. And so you see little ponds and puddles and things like that. But there are also these micro habitats that are not identified in landscape scale remote sensing data. And one of the problems that people are has been identified in the literature is that land cover data is almost always included in the predictive models that are developed by scientists to determine when and where we're going to have mosquito outbreaks. But how do we actually use that land cover data? How can we make that land cover data more precise and more representative of mosquitoes? And so our research is kind of working in that direction. So one of the things we have here is, I'm going to show you now our app. You can see that the Mosquito Habitat Mapper protocol looks a lot like in the beginning as the land cover app. If you can use one of the app tools on Globe Observer, you can really use all of them because they have an internal logical consistency. So once again, we get the date, we get the time, we get a geolocation. And then we're asking you to actually describe the potential breeding site that you have found, whether it might be an artificial container like a tire, that's a beloved place for mosquitoes, or maybe it's a pond or a ditch. But regardless of what you find, once you identify it, we ask you to take a site photo. And this site photo has a lot of information in it that can help us understand why mosquitoes have chosen that place to lay their eggs. And so that site photo then, can then be connected in that landscape and to those land cover photos that we have. And this is going to be particularly important as we are beginning to develop AI tools to help us better understand where mosquitoes are on the landscape. So we have different steps of describing that place and describing how many mosquito things we have. And then the next one is then once you find your place, we ask you to take pictures. And this is not a training on the tool, but you need to know that we do have this high quality data that is being collected with protocols that can be utilized. So basically using a clip-on magnifier, we ask people to photograph the larva. And then once they actually take the picture, then that picture will show up in the app. And then you can take that photo that you have taken and compare it to diagrams and also photographs in our dichotomous key. So you can look at this mosquito here and you can say, well, it doesn't look like the first one, but it kind of looks like the second one. And then you can move on throughout the key and identify what you have. Importantly, though, we know that our citizen scientists, many of them are amateurs. They can be very, very good about what they do, but for that data to be scientifically vetted is also very important, so that can be used for research. And so all the photos that are taken with our app are sent to an AI tool for validation. And we're doing that work now through a grant with the University of South Florida. So once we collect the data, here's the last important thing is we're not just getting data, but we're also encouraging action. So if we have a citizen scientist who's found a breeding site, we're also asking them, hey, is this something that you can mitigate so that mosquitoes won't grow here to protect your community? And if it is, trash or a tire that you can dump out, or it's a cistern that you can cover, we ask people to take that step and we record that data as well. All right, so now I want to go to the next slide and I'm going to talk a little bit about how this data is being used, because that's the really exciting part of this. So our data is going into something called the Global Mosquito Alert Consortium project. This is the mosquito dashboard. And you can see all the places that citizen scientists around the world have reported data. And those blue dots that you see are either land cover or mosquito data that have been collected by these people. And on the left are just some of the mosquitoes that have been collected by citizen scientists. But you can see that we're collecting data on a scale that can be very easily used to answer some of the questions that we have about mosquitoes on the landscape. And so I'm going to give you one example of how we've been very, very successful using citizen science data. And this is the problem of malaria. You probably have heard that vector-borne diseases are in fact the greatest environmental threat that we have with global change, with climate change, and that malaria is in fact one of the most serious diseases for humankind, and it has been for millennia. So we've had some really good successes controlling malaria through education, through the distribution of insect-penetrated bed nets, things like this. But here's the problem. There are now invasive mosquitoes that have moved from Southwest Asia. They are now moving to Africa, and they have very, very different ecological tolerances and habitats. For one thing, they're day biters, not night biters. So those bed nets are not going to help a lot with these malaria vectors. Also, they are container breeders. And what this means is this turns this problem of malaria, which has largely been a rural problem where you have puddles and you have irrigation ditches and things like that. These mosquitoes are happy to be found in tires and in water containers in cities. So this has a tremendous epidemiological impact. They're also resistant to a lot of insecticides, but at the same time, they are competent vectors for malaria. So this is a problem that scientists that are working in malaria are trying to face. So we're trying to find out, where are these mosquitoes found? And I love this example because it shows you that when you collect data, you never know when it's going to be useful. So back in 2020, we had citizen scientists working in Madagascar, and they submitted their photos of a larva. Looking at this larva, it is easy for a specialist to say, oh, that is in fact an Anopheles mosquito. Perhaps it's a malaria vector. But we were also thinking, well, this is strange. We're finding them in containers, and mosquitoes in malaria that are malaria vectors in Madagascar are always found in puddles and in irrigation ditches and these kinds of things. So we were very confused about this. Well, with the AI, we were able to run these samples through, and this is just a little screenshot of the mosquito AI outputs that come through. We were able to run this through. We found out that, in fact, this particular specimen is an Anopheles stephensii. So as a result of the citizen science work that we're doing, the connection to the microhabitat and the macrohabitat that comes from land cover, we are now working together with the President's Malaria Initiative, with the CDC, to try and get citizen scientists to help us identify where these invasive mosquitoes are. We need to stop them in their tracks. Okay, Peter, talk about where people can find these data sets.
Thanks, Rusty. This to me is one of the reasons why I love coming to a community of remote sensing scientists, is because getting into the data is a really important piece of understanding whether it can support my science question or not. And importantly, here we're providing some curated data sets as well as some enriched data sets that already have some remote sensing data associated with it, including some land cover labels coming from some maps. And one of the big things that we're wanting to do here is not only provide data, but also help to bring together code and ways of interacting with that data so that it becomes a really valuable part for the larger community. And so here I wanted to put together a small data set that allows you to see how the data is put together, how it's structured, and how you might be able to use it in what you're doing. Importantly, it's great and valuable to spend some time reading the raw data documentation that helps you to understand how the globe data, which has been around for over 25 years, has been put together and is structured in their database. There's many ways of accessing the data. There's a lot of different protocols that are stored inside of this data set. And so please take the time to read up on that. However, we wanted to make sure that there is a small data set that allows you to do some exploration activities. And so if you go to our dashboard, you'll find a table and some data here of concurrent land cover and mosquito habitat data that we've reduced and made nice and accessible for this research purpose and exercise purpose here. And the big thing that I'd like you to do is, once you understand and see what's in that data set, go over to the Appears tool, which has been highlighted in previous ARSET trainings, and it allows you to extract out analysis-ready data, including land cover, as well as elevation or many other characteristics that you might need to understand mosquito habitat. And you can access that through this tool, and so please upload and explore what is available in the remote sensing data sets that might be able to help you to understand the point data of the land cover and the mosquito habitat. And what we want to point to you is that there are some really valuable environmental variables that are useful in mosquito habitat modeling that do relate to land cover. And you'll find in the Appears tool things like elevation or temperature or vegetation greenness or soil moisture. And so if you get those bits of information, is there a pattern that can explain why we're seeing mosquitoes where we are? And so spend a little bit of time and do this data exploration and see how this data looks and how it might be able to be complemented through enrichment of remote sensing data like this. And it's a wonderful opportunity to think about how we might be able to work together in the future and how citizen scientists might be able to help and enrich the science that we're all doing. Finally, I'd like to highlight that we have produced many peer-reviewed articles that describe not only the data, but also some of the applications of the data in ways that might be useful. And here not only is the reference data and citations available for you to read and follow up on, but also we have, like I said, a lot of this data available and curated in a number of ways. So please explore this and let us know how we might be able to help you in your science. Thank you all so much for coming and hearing about what we're doing with citizen science data.
Thank you so much, Peter and Rusty, for that fantastic presentation on Globe Observer applications and how folks can get involved. So for our final project highlight, we're going to see a few videos from Arctic and Earth Science and Eyes on Ice. And these videos were contributed by Katie Spellman, the Research Assistant Professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and the International Arctic Research Center. So we'll go ahead and play these overview videos for you now.
Arctic and Earth Science aims to create climate change learning experiences for people of all ages that braids Indigenous and Western science. Climate change in the Arctic and beyond is rapidly altering how we live. Arctic and Earth Science trains community teams of youth, educators, and community members to learn about these changes and take action. We use curricula centered on Indigenous values and ways of living, global learning and observations to benefit the environment, or GLOBE, and NASA assets. Teams return home to learn from elders and community members and design their own GLOBE investigations to actively make a difference on climate change issues that matter to them. Subject matter experts who are working on similar topic areas connect in person or virtually with community teams and youth groups to share ideas and discuss their personal journey to STEM careers. We're looking for educators and youth group leaders interested in Arctic climate change and passionate about empowering youth to make a difference in their own community and world. Join us.
Today is Science Day.
Freshwater ice on rivers and lakes is a powerful force on our planet. 1/3 of the Earth's land surface drains into annually freezing rivers, and the seasonality of ice influences ecosystems, cultural practices, economies, and community safety. The timing of freeze-up and break-up play a large role in controlling the extreme river events such as flooding or low flow. It's also a sensitive indicator of climate change. Since Landsat 5 began collecting data in 1984, the extent of freshwater ice and the length of the frozen season have significantly declined. The problem is, during the same time period, the number of ground observations of river ice has also seriously declined. This is where you and your community comes in. We all can help. We at the University of Alaska Fairbanks are excited to announce our new NASA Citizen Science for Earth Systems Program project, Community Eyes on River Ice, where we're expanding our Fresh Eyes on Ice program with the help of tribal, federal, state, and local partners. The University of Alaska Fairbanks has been involved in supporting freshwater ice observing by communities for several decades. The Globe Observer app has opened up the opportunity to greatly expand who can easily participate in ice observing. Most communities in Alaska are along riverways with no connected road access, and frozen rivers are major transportation routes. Tanana Chiefs Conference, a large regional tribal organization spanning 37 federally recognized tribes, is helping lead this project with us to ensure that the app and the data coming from it is accessible and in service to our rural river communities who need the information the most. Contributing to this global effort is easy. Get the Globe Observer app and open the land cover module when you're standing next to your river or lake. Take the photos as instructed in the app. In the field notes, write "fresh eyes on ice" and describe what you see. If the river isn't captured in the 4 cardinal directions that the app follows, take photos manually and make good notes about what direction you had to take the photos in. We're really interested in pictures of the process of freeze up in the fall, any open water in the winter, and the process of breakup in the spring. For all data submitted within Alaska, the observations will be sent in near real time from the Globe Observer app to the National Weather Service, who uses the data for flood forecasting and emergency preparedness during spring breakup, and for river safety reports during the winter. The global data will be put to use to ground truth remote sensing data and for climate change research. Please join us as ice observers in this exciting and important effort.
Okay, so those were some really great videos about how to connect with community and the importance of community observations when addressing key issues like transportation over ice. So I hope you enjoyed those, and if you're interested, can get involved in those projects as well. To summarize and to wrap up for today, here are some of the resources available to you from our training. And also I wanted to mention that many of the figures and concepts articulated in the presentation have links to articles, particularly scientific articles and websites throughout the slides. So please do use those as a resource for your questions as well. And now we'll go into our question and answer portion for today. If you have further questions, you can contact myself or my ARSET colleagues at our email addresses shown here. As a reminder, here's the course website where you can find all the materials, including the PowerPoint presentation, the video, and now the homework link. So you can go click on the homework link and complete that via Google Forms in 2 weeks to receive your certificate of completion. And I've also included our primary ARSET website. So we have trainings in a variety of different topics, such as water resources, health and air quality, climate, disasters. So do check out the main ARSET website for other topic areas you may be interested in. And also feel free to take a look at our sister programs, Develop and Severe. And if you're interested in continuing to hear about ARSET trainings and to stay involved, you can follow us on Twitter as well with our handle shown here. So thank you all so much for attending this training. It's been a pleasure to have you all on, and we will now move into the question and answer session. So as we move into the question and answer session, I want to let everyone know that you will be receiving a link to complete a survey after the completion of this course. And we would love to hear your feedback. We really take it to heart and we really appreciate your perspectives on what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see in the future with ARSET trainings. So do please complete that survey and provide us with that valuable information. We really do use it to develop our trainings in the future as well, so you can contribute yourself to future ARSET trainings. I want to also recognize that we have some of our guest speakers from our projects here with us today. Jennifer Steinling from Snapshot, Wisconsin, Katie Spellman with Arctic and Earth Signs and Fresh Eyes on Ice, Rusty Lowe and Peter Nelson with the Globe Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper and Land Cover. So as we go through the questions, I'll shoot it over to them to jump in and chime in at any point to help us answer these questions here. So we'll go ahead and get right into it with the first question. Question 1 asks, can you share any research that has been investigated the impacts of participation in citizen science projects on the citizen volunteers? So we've provided a link to an article there from Fisher et al. In 2021. Again, another paper from Citizen Science Theory and Practice. I think we've mentioned that journal quite a bit here. And then we have some other information about Snapshot Wisconsin and papers that that team wrote as well. Would any of our panelists like to chime in with any other information on this question?
I would say that the National Academies came out with a really nice comprehensive report on the impacts of citizen science participation on volunteers, and that study was led by Raj Panya. So that's one of my go-to references.
Great, thank you, Katie. Well, maybe we'll try to look for that too and provide the link when we post the Q&A on the website as well. Okay, the next question here, I think it's a pretty straightforward question and answer, but it asks, what platform is Wisconsin's dashboard using? And the answer there, I saw Jennifer typing in, they use rShiny, and the website there is datadashboard.snapshotwisconsin.org. Anything else to add there, Jennifer?
No, I don't think so. I think that covers it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, the next question talks about the Globe app. So it says in the Globe app, which land cover classification system is used? So maybe there's some links here and some comments, but maybe I'll let Rusty and or Peter chime in and provide a little context to this answer here.
Yeah, thanks for that, Amber. I will, this is Peter Nelson here, the science lead for the Globe Observer Land Cover tool. And I do want to highlight that, yeah, classification systems are an ongoing challenge, not only in the remote sensing community, but in the people that want to use that for decision making. And I wanted to highlight in my answer to this question that unlike a lot of other citizen science programs, the Globe program has been around for about 25 years. And so they've actually been part of that evolution of classification systems that has happened from the early 90s to what we currently are using in a lot of our remote sensing, because we now have better temporal scale and observations where we can see things happening on a daily basis, allows us to map things in a way that we couldn't previously, as well as that spatial ability to see and divide up the landscape a little bit better than we previously were able to. So there's a variety of classification systems out there. And one thing that we wanted to be respectful of is that variation that's out there. And so, you know, we specifically employed what is known as the modified UNESCO code, which, you know, was made specifically to work with citizen scientists and you know, came out of the 1990s in particular. But it has those nice categories that really align well with what many of us have used out there in remote sensing, the IGBP particular classification system that is provided with the MODIS land cover based mapping product. And so we tried to align to that. But luckily, all of these classification systems do tend to go together at this very top level, which is we're all looking for trees, shrubs, grasses, barren ground, open water, wetlands, because that's a mix of a lot of things. And then we have these two categories, which tend to be more of a land use, but are also really important to keep track of, because that's the human dimension on the landscape, which is the cultivated areas and urban areas. And so when you look at our data, about 30% of our photos are getting labeled in this way. But we try to be as flexible as possible because we recognize people are working with different classification systems for different scientific purposes. And as we see here in this demonstration, if you're looking at birds, you might care about one particular definition a little bit more than others. In Katie's case, here she's looking between two of our categories. And so it is really important to always dive into the metadata associated with any of these citizen science projects that have been highlighted today to better understand the systems that they're using, the labels that they're using. But luckily, most of this can be reconfigured because we are producing open data. So that's another thing to always keep track of and to pay attention to when you're thinking about citizen science data is that reusability that can come from a variety of these different processes. And so that's one thing that we tried to do specifically with the way that we developed our app. So I'd love to talk more about specifics because that's where the details come in, right? Does my classification of 25% trees match your definition of 15% trees?
Great. Thanks, Peter. A lot of nuance there, as you could tell through that answer. Thank you so much. It looks like the next question is for you too. So question 4 asks, are there any results or insights on how and where in situ land cover assessments have varied from MODIS, and maybe they're referring to 30-meter Landsat resolution from all the measurements on Globe Observer. So I'll let you chime in there as well.
Thanks, Amber. I appreciate that because that is our main science question is, not where are scientists making good maps and their estimates are correct and you can then use them in your carbon analysis or in your modeling of what future scenarios might look like. And so, one of the things that we do see is that unless we are directing people like Katie Spellman's project to particular landscapes to observe particular types of phenomena, people tend to go to places that have tree cover or water cover. Those are two places where people will naturally gravitate to if you don't give them a sample or tell them exactly where to go. And then also the urban areas, because that's where people are living. So that is one thing that is, a particular challenge that that is in our data set and might bias where we're getting our examples from. And it might help certain projects, like looking at mosquito habitat. And so when we look back and actually do that comparison between what we're seeing in the ground photos, what people are labeling in those ground photos, and a map like the MODIS or the map that comes from MODIS, even at that 250 meters, we tend to see a lot more variation in the subpixel fraction, as we call it, right? And we see that when we compare a Landsat map to a MODIS map. We can actually see the variation that's there. And so we do tend to see a little bit more of differences when we're looking at our urban landscapes or those urban pixels at the 250 meter pixel scale, or even the 30 meter pixel scale. When you look at those photos and do some more analysis on them, you do see that it's made up of roads, it's made up of trees, usually individual trees. And that is where we have new products that are coming online that are global 10-meter maps coming from some of the newer sensors. And now we're actually able to add in that vertical component too that allows our classifications to get a little bit better, a little bit more representative of what's actually there to deal with the errors that do come from different sensors or only using one remote sensing sensor. So I'd say we tend to have some biases, and as I wrote in my answer here, we really are trying to move from a hard classification system to more flexibility and thinking of our pixels more in percentages and that fractional cover, so that we can actually also record when we're getting within class change, right? So it's great to know that there's trees there, but knowing that for 20 years is one thing, but then actually breaking it down and looking at how those trees are growing over that 20-year of time is the next piece that we're moving towards in terms of our remote sensing science. So I'm excited about this question because it does reveal opportunities in science that are coming online and future ARSET trainings that will help us to understand that variation that currently is hidden by the old maps and some of the old ways that we were looking at the world through our remote sensing data like that. So long answer, Amber, but it's a fun one because that's why we're putting all these sensors up in space, is to try to get at some of the uncertainty that were in our older maps and our older way of doing things. So image fusion, it's the wave of the future.
Great, thank you, Peter. Appreciate that. And the way you ended the answer to that question feeds into our next question a bit as well, in regards to updating maps and the evolution of data and what it means for species. So the question 5 asks, as a child, I often used field guides to ID plants and animals. I always wondered how they got range maps for an organism. Is anyone using these techniques presented to fine-tune, expand, or contract old range maps? And so I'm sure you all can elaborate a little bit more on that. I've also popped into the answer here, Map of Life, which is another tool that we've highlighted in past ARSET project trainings, where there is a mobile app available, and they are mapping species ranges and changes and all sorts of information on biodiversity across the world. So that's another tool to check out. But I'll let our panelists chime in here if there's anything else you'd like to add for question 5.
Sure, this is Rusty. I'd love to address that. And we showed you a map of all the places that mosquitoes were found by citizen scientists around the world. And that map shows 3 different citizen science programs plus the land cover tool. But we also can take that same data, and we also collect the data on what species those are. So from that general data that I showed you, we also now have those species distribution maps. And specifically citizen scientists, as we see, there's so much great biodiversity work that's being done. It's because citizen scientists are able to find, those, because they're out and around and they're looking at different places. They've been very, very successful in helping to identify these ranges. So citizen science is an incredibly important tool in this regard. Thanks.
In the old days, those range maps that you mentioned as a child, a lot of them were made from collected specimens, and like herbarium specimens, for example, or mammalogy specimens or bird specimens, right? And there was, some biases in where people would go to collect. So in Alaska, we have been using iNaturalist really heavily in our museum to help build out the range maps of plant species. My husband's addicted to this. I mentioned this in the first session, and Stinger would probably have a lot to mention, Stinger Guala, who attended the first session, because I know he's using iNaturalist to also better understand the ranges of bird species, and especially in times of rapid climatic change.
Great, thank you, Rusty and Katie. Anyone else?
Yeah, Amber, I want to really highlight that one of the exciting pieces of citizen science is actually that those old historic range maps from the last 100 years that have been used for decision making have come from a few people, a few observations. We haven't really been able to sample the landscape to really get the extent that we've really needed to make all the decisions that we need to really monitor the planet. And so one of the things that we're all here and presenting and part of is the expanding of science to beyond just those few people, and using technology, using these sensors in our pockets, building databases together that isn't just reliant on the people who get funded, or the people who have the extra time, or the people that can travel. We're really all trying to work together to be inclusive and to try to fill in the holes that we know we're missing because of the way that we collected the data in the past. And so, that is where we're all working together to try to do science better together, in a way that helps to really make fill in the gaps that previously we know were part of the way that science was done in the past.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, I think this next question is likely, I think we just copied and pasted a different question in here. I think it was about mosquitoes initially, but we can go with this question. Oh, there's two questions here now. Okay. Well, we can split this up and maybe make it a two-parter. So we'll start with what's there first for question 6. Has any other state done what Snapshot Wisconsin has done with wildlife? I see Arkansas has a prime place that would have hunters that have extensive game cameras already in use. Yeah, so the question is really around, has this technique been expanded to other places? Jennifer, do you know if there's been any expansion or addition?
Yeah, sure. I can take that one. As far as we know, Snapshot Wisconsin is unique for having a state-run project like this. It's run by the Wisconsin DNR largely now for these annual decisions that happen around wildlife. And so that is a pretty unique application with the scale that we have. We have it at 2,000 cameras, and so we don't think any other states are doing that, any other state natural resource programs or whatever their equivalent might be. That said, there's a lot of other really great big projects out there. The eMammal project has a whole platform, and now they've extended to working on Snapshot USA and Snapshot Europe, and those are some really big networks where they're bringing all different trail camera projects, like mini trail camera projects, together to provide information at continental scales now. So I do think that, like I said, Snapshot Wisconsin is unique for the type of project it is, but there are lots of other great big, large scale camera projects out there that would be fun to look up.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. Okay, I think we'll move on now to question 7 here. This question asks, if we want to map mosquito habitat, what steps should we follow and for our area?
Okay, great. Thanks very much. I'd love to answer that question. So all you have to do if you are interested in doing this is we have the app. You download the app, and then once you download the app and you register, you can follow the steps in the app. So the steps in the app are in fact a scientific protocol. And if you follow those steps, then everybody who's doing it collects data in the same way, and then thus the data are comparable. And so once you just start doing that, you can do like I do whenever I'm riding my bike. Whenever I stop and take a drink of water, I always open up my app. I always do a land cover. I always look for mosquitoes, it's kind of a little bit random. But however, we also have people that are working, for instance, with um, municipal mosquito control programs. A friend of mine, Dan Bartlett, is in the Chicago area, and he uses the Globe Observer app when he does systematic monitoring. So what he does is he has a grid of traps out there, and then he goes to each of those places and he uses the Globe Observer data collection tool, to collect data in those different places. So the important thing about Globe Observer, and what is different than many other citizen science projects, is that it really is a tool without a project. It is, in fact, research question agnostic. You know, we're collecting data that is really important as a whole, that will help us better understand land cover, data, and mosquitoes. But from that, if you've got a problem with malaria, you want to find malaria mosquitoes, you can use that. If you're interested in, for instance, Eastern equine encephalitis, those mosquitoes live in tree holes. And so in the Chicago area, Dan Bartlett is having citizen scientists look at holes in trees and see if there are mosquitoes there. And so, you know, the beauty of citizen science is that anyone, anywhere can collect data, and that's how we begin to get these range maps, but it's opportunistic data. So it's not necessarily a complete coverage, but that data combined with scientific data will provide you with excellent maps. And as you could see, when we get, you know, tens of thousands of points, like I showed you in that map that we have very good coverage of where mosquitoes are found in those countries that are participating. So thank you so much for that question. Last thing is, if you're really interested, go to the Globe Observer website. You can find out more about the Mosquito Habitat Mapper. We also have the Globe Mission Mosquito Campaign, and we have webinars and we have trainings, and we are working with citizen scientists all over the world, as well as professionals, to try and solve this terrible problem of vector-borne disease. So that's my pitch. Thank you for giving me a chance to say that.
Thank you, Rusty. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to question 8 here. This question states that they came across blue bucks in India, which is an antelope species. I presume that the tool won't be available everywhere. Perhaps they are referring to Snapshot Wisconsin in this case. I'm not sure. Is there any method that you would suggest to escape or skip spots in a place which might be dangerous in terms of scale mapping if you narrow it down from big to small? Jennifer, I'm not sure if you want to try to take that one, or if anybody else has thoughts on maybe identifying ranges of species prior to setup of cameras or monitoring techniques.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have too much to add there. Within Wisconsin, though, I would say we have more than just our trail camera network that helps us identify species, where species are. We have lots of surveys that have been conducted historically, and those surveys, even though they're of different qualities and quantities and distribution across the state, they all give us you know, different types of historic information that can kind of be pieced together. Trail camera data is now with Snapshot Wisconsin our best entire picture of the state, but it is still great to have those other sources of more historic data.
Great, thank you, Jennifer.
Hi, Amber. This is Peter Nelson. I want to hop in here because this idea of both safety of volunteers and where we ask people to go to collect data is really important, and it's also something that people who work at NASA and do field research, go out to places, have to consider as well. And so, even though we might want to have a sample every 30 meters out there, we know that there's cliffs out there, there's the middle of road intersections, there's places that are just dangerous to go. And then on top of that, there is actual privacy concerns and legal concerns that vary across the country, across the globe. And so one of the things that has brought me to, like, say, the GLOBE program is the fact that it is a global program. I know that the app has, should be able to work in any of those GLOBE countries. And so I know, at least with that particular project, the scope of data collection has sort of been and some of those logistics, I hope, have been carried out by somebody else, right, responsible for the larger project. I think, as Jennifer was saying there, the focus of Wisconsin obviously would focuses that tool in a particular location, which probably wouldn't work in India, right? Because that's a different scope of the project. So I think that's one of those pieces that, for me as a scientist, I want to consider when I'm looking at who to partner with or what science methods might actually work for me. And we always want to be considerate of ownership of land, of these legal considerations, and also recognize that it changes over time, which will change our ability to look historically back at that same data. And so those add complexity to the change over time component that many of us want to be able to monitor or want to be able to understand, especially when we're thinking about climate change or things like that. Some of our data records, especially coming from citizen science, are restricted with where we can collect, how we can collect. And so I appreciate this piece, because it is something that we do want to really be aware. We don't want to send somebody out onto thin ice, literally, right, Katie? And have people be in dangerous situations. That's not our goal. And we don't want anybody to put themselves in dangerous situations where they might endanger themselves, and that's not what science is about. So we want to be cognizant of that, and always be aware of our surroundings, how we're collecting our data, and not do anything dangerous. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, stay on the bank when you're observing ice.
Thank you, Peter. Yeah, very good points there about the safety of participants. And while science is important and useful, it's not worth being heard over. So very good points there when thinking about safety. I recognize we're at time now for our session today, and I just want to thank the panelists again for your time. We so appreciate your answers to these questions, your contributions to the series, for being with us today, and to thank all of you from around the world who are with us. We love to see such a diverse array of people and experiences with us here for our training. So we thank you so much. A couple reminders, we will be posting all the Q&A documents to the course website once we get them cleaned up and answer everything as best we can. So you could check back there if your answer didn't get, or your question didn't get asked, or you want to have some of these resources in the future. We will have a survey we'll be sending out to you all that we mentioned at the beginning of the Q&A session today. So do please take that. Let us know how you're feeling, what you'd like to see in the future. And then finally, the link to the homework is now available also on the course website. So if you'd like to receive that certificate of completion and you were with us for all 3 sessions, go ahead and do that by February 14th, I believe is the deadline, 2 weeks from today. And we'll be sending out those certificates in about 2 months' time. So please join us for our future ARSET trainings. Stay up to date on the website, follow us on Twitter. We'd love for you all to be with us. So thanks again, everyone, and do enjoy the rest of your day.